The desert wind tore through the camp like a warning, rattling metal poles and snapping torn canvas flaps, but inside the GP medical tent, the atmosphere was even sharper. A U.S. Marine, tall, broad-shouldered, and cocky with youth, smirked at the quiet man standing near the supply table. The man was only there to deliver donated blankets, dressed in plain clothes, no uniform, no insignia, nothing to hint at the life he once lived. The Marine leaned forward with a joking grin and asked, "So, old man, what rank were you supposed to be?" The man turned, his eyes steady, his voice low but firm as he replied with calm clarity, and suddenly every soldier in the tent froze mid-movement, breath held as if time itself bridged past and present in one shattering moment. If you believe in respect, kindness, second chances, and the unseen stories carried in quiet hearts, then pause for a moment, like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and subscribe to channel name to stay with us till the end of this journey. His name was Daniel Hayes, a single dad living miles away from the noise of cities, tucked inside a small town where people knew each other by the sound of footsteps. To most, he was just the man who ran the old repair shop near the gas station, the one whose hands were rough from fixing engines and whose back carried the weight of responsibilities no one could see. He rarely spoke of his past, of medals tucked in dusty drawers or photos hidden in a box under his bed. He didn't need praise. He needed peace, and for the last 7 years, peace was the only thing he sought after losing his wife, Clara, to cancer shortly after their son Mason was born. The world called him strong, but grief had carved hollow spaces in his chest, and raising a child alone felt like fighting a war with invisible enemies every day. Mornings began with packing lunches and tying shoelaces, evenings ended with homework and bedtime stories, and in between, Daniel worked until his hands shook. Bills piled up like mountains, laughter in the house was rare, and sometimes he caught Mason watching other kids leave school with 2 parents instead of 1. Those moments cut deeper than any battlefield wound ever had. Daniel would ruffle his son's hair, smile, and pretend strength he no longer felt. Behind closed doors, he stared at his reflection and wondered if he was giving enough, being enough, surviving enough. Then came the wildfire, the one that burned through nearby hills and left families without homes. Relief forces rolled into town, GP tents rose like temporary hope, and volunteers were called. Daniel couldn't offer much, but he had blankets, tools, and a heart that understood loss. So he went, Mason holding his sleeve as they entered the camp where Marines and medics moved like orchestrated rhythm. There was noise, urgency, the smell of smoke still clinging to the wind. That was when the Marine asked about his rank, laughing like it was just friendly teasing. No one expected Daniel to answer, but something inside him stirred, a piece of the man he used to be woke up like a sleeping lion. He looked straight into the Marine's eyes and quietly replied, "Sergeant Major, former Force Recon. Retired." Silence rippled through the tent like a sudden frost. The joking Marine's face drained of color as those around him slowly turned. One by one, Marines straightened their backs. A general entering the tent paused mid-step. Respect rolled through the space like thunder. A decorated Force Recon Sergeant Major was no ordinary rank, it was a warrior forged from missions most never heard of, the kind of soldier others saluted without hesitation. Daniel didn't bask in the shock. He simply nodded, adjusting the blankets in his hands and stepped aside to help, but word spread like wildfire through camp. By afternoon, people whispered his name with reverence, and by evening, a senior officer found him unloading boxes near the trucks. The officer asked why a man with such history lived quietly in a small town. Daniel hesitated, eyes softening with memories he rarely visited. He spoke of his wife, of the promise he made to raise Mason away from bloodshed, of choosing fatherhood over medals. The officer listened with a gaze heavy with respect, then asked if Daniel could stay longer as a volunteer. They needed calm leaders in crisis. Daniel agreed for a day. That day turned into 3. 3 turned into a week. Something inside him awakened not as a fighter, but as a protector, a role he thought ended when he took off his uniform. Mason ran around the camp, small hands handing water bottles to tired soldiers, laughter filling the dusty air like sunlight breaking clouds. For the first time in years, Daniel felt purpose bigger than survival. The Marines, once strangers, treated him like family. They asked for guidance, shared meals, even listened to stories Mason told about how his dad fixed broken tractors with magic hands. But the story wasn't without hardship. One night, a wounded soldier arrived, barely breathing, shaken and burning with pain. Medics were short-handed, power flickered, and chaos loomed. Everyone looked to Daniel, not because of his rank, but because calm radiated from him like an anchor in a storm. His old training rose through muscle memory. He held pressure on the wound, gave orders with steady voice, stabilized the young man until medical backup arrived. Hours later, the soldier survived. A group gathered around Daniel, eyes shining with gratitude that words could not express. It wasn't medals on his chest, they were gone. It was the honor in his heart, still alive. As days passed, Daniel and Mason became symbols in the camp, not of war, but of resilience, love, and second chances. Mason found friends, Daniel found belonging, and slowly he realized he wasn't alone anymore. The Marines, who once laughed casually, now greeted him with respect only earned through sacrifice. And the young Marine who had joked initially? He approached Daniel one morning, head lowered, apologizing not for the joke, but for assuming a man without badges held no worth. Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Strength isn't in titles, it's in how we live each day with courage, kindness, and humility." Before leaving, the unit gathered in the GP tent. A flag was handed to Daniel, not because he asked for recognition, but because he reminded them what it meant to serve with heart. Mason clutched his father's arm, pride glimmering in his little eyes. In that moment, Daniel felt something deeply, pain, healing, memory, hope, all merging into one powerful truth. His past was never a burden. It was a gift he carried silently, and through giving again, he found himself whole. If this story touched you, even a little, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name so we can continue bringing more heart-moving stories to your screen. Your support means more than words can say. Before we end, take a moment and comment one word describing what you felt while hearing Daniel's journey. Hope? Respect? Strength? Love? We'd love to read them. And as Daniel walked back home with his son, the flag folded in his hand gently like memory and promise stitched together, he looked at Mason and smiled, the kind of smile that carried a lifetime of battles, grief, survival, and new beginnings. He realized he had never stopped being a soldier, he had simply become a soldier of love.